In 1996, Resident Evil terrified gamers by placing them in a deadly mansion filled with zombies and monsters. To make things even worse, ammunition was limited. Players found themselves running away, using tank controls in order to survive. To top it off, the camera angles often obscured the coming hordes and only made navigation more difficult. This amalgamation of a heavy atmosphere, powerful enemies, low ammo reserves, and static camera angles have been staples of the Resident Evil series. Hey everyone out there, it's Mark, and these are my thoughts on the Resident Evil series. My personal favorite Resident Evil games were all released on the Nintendo GameCube. Resident Evil the Remake was even scarier with its better graphics, new gameplay additions, and inclusion of the dreaded Crimson Head. Imagine gunning down a zombie and triumphantly marching away. Upon returning to the room, you find the corpse a crimson color. My heart almost burst out of me as it got back up, but now with razor-sharp claws, making horrifying noises and roars, and running at you at full speed. Just want to get the hell out of there. Capcom continued to support the GameCube with Resident Evil Zero, a brand new entry to the franchise that gave players control of Billy and Rebecca. The duo had to cooperate in order to survive another crazy mansion. To me, Resident Evil pretty much topped out with these two GameCube titles, but there's only so much you could do with the survival horror genre that the series itself popularized. So instead of staying static like the game's camera angles, Capcom dramatically changed things with Resident Evil 4 by placing the camera behind Leon's back at all times. Gamers found themselves even more immersed in the game world than ever before. The new aiming controls allowed for precise weapon handling. Enemy about to hit you with an axe, point your pistol at their hand and shoot it out of their grip. Surrounded by a horde of crazed villagers, stun one with gunfire and roundhouse kick them into the group. This emphasis on action may have put off many fans of the series, but I personally enjoyed it. Resident Evil 4 was no longer an archaic survival horror game. No more static angles, no more low ammunition reserves, and no more zombies. The new camera actually made the attack controls even friendlier. Why bother calling it Resident Evil 4? Well, Resident Evil 4 still has one important trait that all other Resident Evil games share, and it's that oppressive atmosphere. That mansion felt suffocating in Resident Evil, with its tight corridors and long hallways. Resident Evil 2 and 3's Raccoon City had this post-apocalyptic feel that put many gamers on edge. At first glance, Resident Evil 4's village doesn't hold a candle to the areas its predecessor had. Play a little further into Resident Evil 4, and night falls upon the village. It provides this sinister air to the game. Villagers' eyes start glowing a burning red as they try to slaughter Leon and Ashley in the rainfall. And that was only the beginning. Later environments had even darker and more sinister feels, like that creepy island or that scary castle. It's this palpable and oppressive atmosphere that all Resident Evil games have shared until the next entry. Resident Evil 5 fully embraced that revolutionary action of the previous entry, but loses that strangling atmosphere. There was something about Africa's fictional kaiju that didn't provide the same sense of dread the previous entries emanated. Maybe it was the sun's brightness in the early levels that sapped all the tension, or maybe it was the faster pacing. There was no time to slow down and take in the atmosphere, because players were too busy shooting enemies. To me, Resident Evil 5 embraced that action a little too much. While a fantastic action game in its own right, it loses that intense atmosphere that drew me into the worlds of Resident Evil 1 through 4. And Resident Evil 6 looks to further embrace that action, but at what cost? I haven't played Resident Evil 6, but the reviews aren't glowing. But as a fan, I need to know for myself. Well, those are some of my thoughts on the Resident Evil series. I'm excited for the console version of Resident Evil Revelations, because it looks like it combines my two favorite parts of Resident Evil, that scary atmosphere and shooting monsters in the face. So, what are your thoughts on the series so far? Feel free to drop a comment at the bottom. Well, thanks. Until next time, this is Mark signing off.